Well, as some of you will remember from my last video, I've had this site now for 2 years. That's all. 27th of May 2018 is when I got this particular pair of plots, and I just thought it was about time I'd give you a bit of a plot tour. This is the front of my plot. This is normally where I have my large drop-offs made, so I've got a little bit of compost, some wood chips, and 4,000 litre IBCs, which I'll talk to you a little bit more about in future videos, because that's for quite an ambitious plan to irrigate the entire plot. That's my front shed with the huge solar panel on top, that will be powering it. That's my storage shed. It's got all sorts of bits and pieces in there, nothing particularly interesting in a rain barrel. Now, this is plot 1, so at the front of plot 1, the first growing things are my surplus asparagus. These are crowns that I bought last year, all surplus to requirements, because the asparagus I thought was dead wasn't. So I put them all into tubs and growing them on, with a plan to build another bed probably over the winter this year. First set of beds. These are all Brassicas, and they're an interplanted mix of cauliflower, calabrese and romanesco. I planted these quite late last year, and you can see I need to do some repair work there, and I'm only just sort of starting to come to the point of heading. So if I'll show you that one. I don't know if you can see that. Starting to head up, and perhaps it's a bit more obvious on that romanesco. Just starting to head up. So we're getting towards it. Again, there's another behind them. There's another one full of brassicas. This one started out full of brassicas, but I had something get in and destroy huge quantities. So instead, I replaced it with some lettuces. A little bit of spinach at the back, but I'm not expecting the spinach. The spinach really got far too dry. Did not like it, and has basically not grown a great deal. So, and by the time that actually gets to any size, it will be far too hot and it'll go run straight to seed. But yeah, c'est la vie. This is my garlic, starting to get towards being ripe. I mean, you can see the bulbs down the bottom, they're starting to swell a little bit. Need to water this a little bit more, but probably got 3 or 4 weeks before that gets ready for harvest. Yet another brassica one behind it. This one started with brassicas and has got a single large spinach plant, massively run to seed. I've just left it be in there. Quite frankly, it's doing no harm, and I'll attend to that once I start to harvest the brassicas in that tunnel. My shallots, again, they're starting to yellow up. Got a few that have started to fall over, so probably another 2 or 3 weeks before they come up. Some more later planted shallots. These were only put in the ground first week of March, I think. Done quite well. A few beetroot, not a great deal. Most of my beetroot's at home, but a few. And then a couple of rows of spring onions sort of started to come up. They've only been up a few days, so not doing too badly. These are my dwarf French beans. These are a variety called Red Swan, which produce pink pink pods, which I thought was quite cool. Growing quite a lot of those this year, quite a lot of beans generally. Then we come to my very, very grassy raspberry patch. I will weed that. It's been quite low on my list because it's a bit of a pain to weed in there, but I'll get around to doing that. And my other shame, which is the Asparagus Bed, absolutely overrun with bindweed. I bought in some compost
that had bindweed in, and it's killed it. I clear this out every other week, and every time, you know, within 2 weeks it's back. I will probably this winter lift all of those crowns, empty that bed entirely, and rebuild it from scratch, bagging up the soil and literally leaving it in plastic bags for a couple of seasons to sweat and fully decompose the bindweed, because I can't trust it. At the back, well, you can see these were my strawberries from last year that were nicely in that bed, and they have gone absolutely everywhere. 3 beds just everywhere. I will be lifting all of these at the end of this season, splitting them back, so these 3 will still be planted up, but I'll split them back up, and then I'll be creating a large new 15-16 foot by 5 feet bed to go alongside it, because we do like our strawberries. This bed looks like it's empty, and it mostly is, but it wasn't. As you can probably see, get rid of that bindweed, that was a tomato. Now I have replacements for them. They're indoors still, and they won't come out for another 2 weeks. And what I had was cross-shaped or zigzag-shaped plantings of tomatoes, and then 2 rows of celeriac. Now, the frost really did a number on the celeriac, but it's coming back. So at least I've got the celeriac in it. Another brassica bed. This one didn't do so well. I've had a couple of cabbage out of here, and they're suffering from the heat. Something chronic, I need to water them. The 2 really good ones which are coming true now are the purple sprouting, which I planted last year, and I've really started to fly. This is my overwintered sensu yellow onions. As you can see, these are doing good guns. I mean, if I show you that's a good sized onion. These will probably be ready in a couple of weeks when the tops start to fall over. At the back here, you've got 1, 2, 3 more beds of onions. I mean, look at the size of that. I planted these bulbs 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. Amazing how fast they grow. This was another bed where we had tomatoes and celeriac. So we had tomatoes, celeriac, tomatoes, celeriac, and I put a line of the onions down there. Celeriac coming back, tomatoes are all toast. Then we come over to these 2. This is what will be the courgette bed. It's got 3 in at the moment. I've got a number to go in still at home that I'll bring down. It's just time and tide. That's an empty bed for now. That one will probably be the celery, which I'll show you some of in a minute. Pumpkin bed, the intention being this one down here can run all the way down the path for as long as it cares to, and this one can go all up and around the big bins and back round in a circle if it needs to. And then this one is an empty as well. Not quite sure what I'm going to put in there yet. It needs topping up. You know, that was full to the brim when I filled it in February, and it sunk that much, so I'll fill that up from the heaps. In addition to what you've seen, I'll show you in a minute, there's another 2.5 tons on the back plot. Then we have my 3 big 75cm deep root vegetable ones. I've got another one at home, but I need to borrow a friend of mine's car in order to get it down, which with lockdown is not possible at the minute. First one, these carrots. First couple of rows have come up fantastic. Second set, much sparse. I think it's the temperature's just absolutely killed it. I'll probably have to re-sow those, and I'll do a couple more rows. Very happy with my parsnips, however. I've done a first thinning and these have come up beautifully. I'll leave these until they're about yay high, so about 6 to 8 inches high, and then I'll thin down again to about 1 every 4 inches, something like that. So I should get a good couple of dozen, given that I'm the only one that eat parsnips. That should be absolutely plenty for my needs. And then this one will be filled. A little bit of hugelkultur going on. You'll see where they came from in a moment. And then compost bays. These will be changing fairly shortly. I'm going to have a 4-bay pallet one, so back to back 4-bay, so 2 squares back to back, so 4. And then these 2 will go the other way around, 1 and then 2. That wheelie bin, that small wheelie bin, and the bag that's in front of it, that's actually my perennial weeds. That's the bindweed that I pull out, things like that. What I do is I shove them in there, I fill it full of water, I leave it for a month and leave them to dissolve pretty much, and then use it as a liquid feed, and whatever's left over goes in the compost heaps as a valuable mulch. So in terms of, and of course the huge plum trees. So for plot 1, I'll give you a view down it. So that's what plot 1 is. So you've got the large 75 centimetre root veg ones, pumpkins, empty. These are the 2 you can't see hidden by these 2. Then it's empty, but probably celery, courgettes. Then it's a mishmash, onions, celeriac and tomatoes on that side, onions, so overwintered onions, and brassicas. And then on this side it's 3 lots of onions, and on this side, after the 3 lots of onions, you've got 3 lots of strawberries. Then it's French beans, then it's brassicas, one of which has got some lettuce in it. And then on this side, after the brassicas, you've got celeriac and tomatoes. Then you've got raspberries, celeriac and tomatoes. No, then asparagus, then raspberries, then brassicas, garlic, brassicas, and then the shed and the various bits and pieces that I've got at the end there. So that's plot 1. Now plot 2. That's my little picnic table that's currently housing lots of plants. I've got cucumbers and some kale on there. I've got various other brassicas here. A little bit of celery and some spare corn just in case. And then the rest of my timber yard. I am currently building raised beds. This is recycled timber donated to me by a local landscaping firm, and that was back in January. They also donated those stone crates that I've mentioned before. So I'm working my way through, seeing what's good on that and what's not. The offcuts from building the beds, as you see, went into the bottom of that large raised bed. This is the shed from on plot 2. It is decidedly Heath Robinson. When I come back and show you what I'm planning over the next 6 weeks or so, which is to do with those IBCs, I will show you the inside of that and show you how I've set up the electrics and the solar, etc. Got a big blue drum here. I've got blue drums everywhere, and some pipe. That was from when I was doing some fitting a couple of outdoor taps. Basically, I used some speed fit. That was that's left over, but that will become the hoops on some of the beds, because you may well guess that we like our brassicas. We have a huge quantity and we consume a huge quantity. This is my poor rhubarb bed. It badly needs weeding, and you can see I've just started, and I'll chip around it as I weed. I've taken quite a lot. I mean, these are only 1 year old. You know, this was last March. I took these as splits from my large ones at home and put these down here. Then we go into the fruit cage that has a top but no sides. I've run out of netting and I can't seem to find any of the type I like, so it's quite difficult at the minute. As you can see, I've had a bit of a mow and a trim around the base of the trees. These are all cherry trees, these four, by the way. Sweet cherries. And I'm just putting some more mulch down to smother them. Over here we've got the gooseberries. There's 12 of those. I love gooseberries. As you can see, got a good crop of fruit on them this year. Again, these have only been put these in February last year, 2019. I got nothing off them last year, but I'm very happy with how it's looking this year. Looking for like lots of fruit. Very pleased. They're planted very close together, but there's a reason for that. So the lower branches, when we get to the end of the season, are going to be clipped back, and I'm going to use those for creating cuttings, and then these are going to be trained predominantly to go up, almost cordon style, but not quite. I want them to be sort of almost like a V shape, an open V for each one, without crossing, so that I can maximise the fruit yield and make it as productive as possible in what is quite a small shape, a small space. Sorry. My blueberries, which the eagle-eyed amongst you might notice, has also got a few onions. I had a few spare sets, and the bed was here, so shove them in there. Yeah, the blueberries only went in second week in April this year. I did have some last year, but the weeds took over and throttled them out, so I built them a specific bed with ericaceous compost in it this year. I don't expect to get any fruit. I have had some flowers. I don't know if you can see that. Whether I get any fruit is another matter entirely, but that's fine. That's not a problem. I'm okay with that. Now this is the section that I'm building raised beds into at the minute. I think I've got enough space for 2, possibly 3 more. I'm pretty certain I've got enough timber for 3, it's just whether I've got the space. And then we start down the rest of the raised beds for plot 2. These, you'll see that the original plot for plot 1 was 6x6 beds with a gap in the middle. These are not. These are all 14 to 16 foot beds. These ones, these 3, are what I would call 1 year beds. It's second-hand recycled, relatively thin timber. It'll last a season, at which point I'll have to replace the sides, and that's fine. I'm okay with that, you know. At least it'll give me something to grow, because I'm desperately short of space for my brassicas especially. And speaking of which, some bread full of brassicas. In the middle you've got very sad looking, I've been watering them every night for the last couple of nights, kale, sprouts in the middle, kale down the very end, and then a variety of cauliflowers on either side. And I want to repeat that in that bed, and possibly another bed. I've got quite a lot of brassicas, and you know, what you've seen in the 7 covered beds, plus this, and what you've seen on that's just what I've got here. I've got more at home, which are smaller again than this, which will come on as a 3rd crop. This is currently empty. This will become my watermelon bed. I've got the watermelons at home. I still want them slightly bigger before I bring them out and put them out though, and ideally I want the nighttime temperatures just a little bit higher. The aim being to just have them scramble up and down this bed to their heart's content. This one is my sweet corn, my 3 sisters bed. Sweet corn, once it gets established and gets a bit bigger, I will plant climbing French beans around the base of these stalks, as the ears as they go up. Probably, I think I've got some Blauhild, which is a purple podded variety, and I can't remember what else I've got now. So yeah, they'll scramble up those like a wigwam and produce their beans. Also amongst them, I've got 6 butternut squash, and again, they will provide ground cover in and amongst these. Now these are quite densely planted. These are, you can see from the string, is square foot gardening. Not quite. It's 11 and 7/8 because it's not quite 5 foot wide. But it should give me a decent crop. This is all fresh soil with I've heavily amended this with, it's a combination of topsoil and municipal compost, bloodfish and bone, horn and hoof, and cow muck, basically, and that should do that one fine. Now we come to my bean arch. This is for whereas for the dwarf French beans and the climbing beans will be for fresh harvests and freezing. This is on this side white lady runners, and on the other side it's borlottis, and they will be exclusively for dried beans. So the aim is that they'll climb up and over the top, produce their crops, and then at the end of the season they'll be harvested for dried beans. And again, celeriac and zigzag of tomatoes. One thing you may have noticed so far is that I quite often plant celeriac with tomatoes. The reason being is that my larger beds, the ones down the front, are 6 foot wide, so they're huge. Very difficult to lean in and do things with, as I discovered when I planted them full of tomatoes last year. So by putting the celeriac down the centre, of which I've got plenty, because we really like celeriac, so we grow quite a lot. I don't really, apart from watering, I don't have to look at those. I don't have to reach across. I don't have to fiddle with them right until the end of the year, which means that the depth that I'm actually reaching into the beds for is a lot less, because for the tomatoes is a lot less. You'll also notice that, surprisingly, and it's only in this one bed, although I've got replacements coming, some of these dead tomatoes have thrown up from their base plates some baby ones. So hopefully I won't need all of them, and they'll come good. The reason I'm quite keen to do these is that this is actually the 3rd year of an experiment I've been doing with tomatoes. So these were in F1. So it was a manual cross with a paintbrush between 2 blight resistant varieties originally, and all I've done is I kept the best fruit from the most blight resistant plants last year. And these are the seed, and again I'll continue to do that every year. I'll grow it, so I'm going to have a higgledy-piggledy mess of sizes, types, colours, things like that. So I'll grow them up. The most typey ones, largest, most typey, most blight resistant ones are ones I'll keep, till eventually I have an open pollinated blight resistant variety that's a heavy yielder. You know, it might take 10 years, but it's worth doing, you know. Everything else can get cooked down and turned into pasta sauce, which is predominantly what we use it for. Pasta sauce and chopped tomatoes. We go through 6 or 8 jars a week. And that's the opposite bed in exactly the same way. As you can see, these have been a bit scorched around the tips. They didn't like the transplant, but nice green fresh growth tells me these are going to be fine. Then 2 beds of potatoes that were horrifically knocked with the frost. I mean, they were taken down to ground level. Some of them haven't come back. This is my main crops. They were planted a little later, so they'd only just started peeking through when the frost hit, so the damage has been less. My earlies, however, were, yeah, I don't think that's coming back, or that one, or that one. So you reap what you sow. Just a little pot of first early peas. And the polytunnel, which is a complete mess. Don't apologise for it, because it's a working space. Down this side we have some spring onions that I didn't even know were in there. I did have a bank of spring onions in there this time last year, but I took them all up, so this must have been hanging around. And it's standard white Lisbon. It's gone to seed, so I'm going to leave it to go to seed. I'll stick a bag over the top and collect myself some fresh seed. This side is melons, so that one's not doing too well, but most of the others are, these are Galia type ones, doing really well indeed. These are all fungolds. They got Some of them got nipped by the frost, others were fine. It just depended really where the light fell. It was that that discriminatory in here. You've got a couple like these two where actually the main stem died, but it's regrown from the basal plate, which is brilliant. Seem to have a volunteer potato there. Hey, whatever. And then you've got ones like this one that I'm probably going to have to take out. And others that are sort of the halfway house, they've resprouted from the top. But that's fine. You know, I've got fruit setting. You'll see on these ones that didn't get checked by the frost that I've taken all the lower leaves up to the first truss. Once that truss has been depleted, I will move to the next truss and take the leaves off. I mean, it'll be 8 feet tall by the time it gets to that sort of stage. This one decided to fall over earlier, and that twist has come in 24 hours. It will correct itself. That's why it's balanced on the string there. Within 24 hours, that will right itself, and I'll be able to twist it around. And we've got some fruits forming on it already, much as with the melons. Now, I've got footage. I tried to create a gravity fed drip feed system. However, I've struggled with the barrels, quite frankly, in terms of getting the water supply, and I've decided to go fully pumped irrigation on the whole site. So that will be replaced, but that's what the central piping is, and I'll leave that in and I'll use that as part of it. Got a cup of water here, which has currently got some other suckers, because they got checked so badly. I deliberately left some of these side shoots longer on the ones that weren't checked, specifically so I could do this. Those will root in that cup, and I'll be able to shove them in the slots that are spare, and they'll rump away. They'll be 10 days, 2 weeks behind everything else, but that's about it. And on this side, we have cucumbers at the back, of which I've had about 6 small. These are all snack size cucumbers. We just find it easier to deal with the snack size ones than the full size ones, because I mean the kids can eat an entire snack size one to themselves. No problems at all with that. Got flowers on the peppers, and there's a huge variety here, mostly sweet peppers. I think we've got 8 or 9 different varieties. What I have noticed though is that although only a couple of the peppers got nipped by the frost, virtually all of them have done this. It was cold enough to trigger the chemical change in the tips and send the messages down to say bush out, because they've pretty much all bushed out, and phenomenally so. I mean, bearing in mind that we're only last week of May here, that stands a good fist of having a pretty good yield this year. I mean, that cucumber died, and I think one at the very end, a tiny one, died, but I've got tons of replacements. Those were some of the ones down in the pots by the shed that you saw, to replace those. So no great shakes. That's my grapevine. It's the second year I've had it. Last year it threw up tons of shoots, and then we got the late frost and it killed it stone dead, and I thought it was dead, and I plonked it in there, and it didn't grow the whole of the rest of the season. This spring it decided to shoot out, so I'm going to train that up and over as best I can. Hopefully it will be creating enough solid wood to shoot from again the following year. And then down in this corner we've got more celery in a couple of tubs. Just it's only been pricked out a little while, so you know it's still quite young, and yet more peppers and more cucumbers, and that's it really. I mean, that's what the plots looked like when I took them over 2 years ago. That's 3.5 feet high of just perennial weeds and bramble bloody everywhere. I mean, this whole pathway down this side I've given up on. I probably will get the mower out and start to mow that. but just to stop it encroaching any further. And then around this side I've just got a bit of a blank space and a nice big pile of compost down this end as well, so I've got some at either end. One of the IBCs will come and live behind that polytunnel there as part of the pumping process. So yeah, that's plot 2. So it starts at the shed, goes to rhubarb, then cherry trees, gooseberries and blueberries. Space for a couple of empty beds, 2 empty but not yet filled beds. Then we've got brassicas, what will be the pumpkin, what will be the melon bed, then corn, then tomatoes and celeriac with beans growing over the top, 2 lots of potatoes, and then the polytunnel. And that's it, that's the plot. Obviously my sowing videos will have stopped now, so I'll bring you more onto the plot so you can see the things that I'm doing maybe once a week, you know. So hopefully next time I bring you back, we'll see what these tomatoes have done. We'll see whether we've got any sprouting there. Hopefully I'll get this finished getting this path chipped and the fruit cage chipped. Get my poor maligned rhubarb de-weeded and chipped. I did have a big pull of the leaves, so it's not like it's completely dead. I had a big pull of the leaves deliberately so that it would make it easier for me to weed. So I'll weed and chip, and that should be that. And I'll bring you back in a few days for a week, and as I start to progress with the irrigation system, I'll show you how the setup works. I've got solar set up for the polytunnel. I did have it in there before, but over winter I took it out. I'll put that back in there ready for the pumping. So the polytunnel will have its own separate pumping system with its own separate IBC, because they're moisture dependent plants. And then the rest of this plot will be serviced by one IBC powered by solar, although that solar is moving around to the other side, because at the moment that's about the only time of the day when it catches the sun. South facing is actually here, so that will be moving around there. So I'll have 2 IBCs at the far end controlled by independent pumps using that solar system. One to run the irrigation for that side, and one to run the irrigation for the first half of that plot. And then there'll be another IBC down by the green shed, which will, with its own separate pump again, which will pump the front half of that plot. I've got to put gutters on the sheds, all of the sheds, in order to capture roof water, and I will pump to fill from the troughs, because we don't have hose pipes or stand pipes. So I'll pump to fill them to start with, so that there's something in there for the irrigation systems to use, because quite frankly this is quite a lot of area. I spent 3 hours watering last night. I calculated it was something like 520 litres of water in 2 watering cans. So yeah, it's no fun. I'd much rather spend my time doing major jobs and just once it's all done, weeding. You know, weeding is a never-ending task. You know, half of the weeds that I've got, I mean, my paths desperately need a weed, but it's time, you know. And at the minute I'm focusing on A, keeping everything alive with watering, and B, finishing up those beds so that I can get all my crops in. Once that's done, then weeding will be more of a priority, particularly if I can automate the watering. It gives me more time on the plot spent not lugging water around, and instead paying attention to my crops, doing things like feeding and things with those. I mean, I need to tie these up really, put some canes in each corner and run some string around them to stop them flopping everywhere. I really want to get a handle on that bindweed. So anyway, that's it for this one, and I will see you again probably in about a week. Got a few things coming up, so we'll be starting harvest videos fairly shortly. Maybe next week I'll take you around the beds at home. I'll see you in the next one.